Hello and welcome to Youth in Agriculture, and from what you can see today, we are not coming to you from a farm somewhere, but we are recording from our gardens here at the Standard Media Group. And my guest today is not a new face to you, and she's a youth champion very big on urban farming, and recently she attended a summit at Kigali, Rwanda, where she shared platform with African leaders and key stakeholders in the agriculture sector, and today she's here to transfer knowledge to us. Wangari, thank you so much for creating time for us, and you're here of course to transfer knowledge on things that you learnt about during the AGRA summit that was held in Kigali, Rwanda.
Yes.
So before we even get to that, let's get to know who Wangari is.
So my name is Wangari, or the founder and CEO of Farmer on Fire. My company core business is to disperse information, give access to information to farmers. Farmers struggle over three things: access to funding, access to information, and access to market. And so we took up that one challenge of making sure that we are providing farmers with benchmarking ways to improve their production.
So you attended the AGRA summit, which was held in Kigali, Rwanda, where you shared platform with several heads of African states. And what are some of the things, key issues that you were able to pick, maybe some of the lessons that we can be able to apply in our food systems?
So incidentally, this was my second summit. When it was in Kenya last year, I happened to even host it. So this year, it was a default that I was also part of the speakers. And I was invited by AGRA, who are one of the partners in the AGRF Summit 2022. It was in Kigali in September 9th, and we took a flight, went there. For a whole week, we were just discussing food security. It was a very interesting conversation to meet with other people who are talking about the same thing and trying to find solutions. But above all, it's about the dialogues that spark something in your mind, that, you know, expose something that you probably didn't know. And in that way, you can go back home and implement those ideas.
Maybe you can tell us about the theme that the summit was running under?
So this year's theme was Grow, Nourish, and Reward. This is to give us guidance on which specific areas to give attention to, where funding should go, where support should go, to ensure that there is consistent growth and there is a way to check on progress a year after.
And what would you say are the greatest challenges affecting the African countries where food production, distribution is concerned? So
major challenges with the African setting. The first one is that we have a majority of small-scale farmers. In other countries, you find they count land in hectares. In Kenya, if you find someone who has more than an acre, they are considered middle class. So our first challenge is that we are not able to produce enough as individuals. And some of the solutions would be maybe trying to come together, trying to farm the same crop of a certain area and marketing it as one product, as one entity. So the age factor is an issue, and that is why for us it's very important to make sure that we are bringing young farmers into the forefront of this conversation.
Yourself, you have a very different background from agriculture, but again, you assimilated in the sector in a way that you're a person people look up to for information, and not just information, but credible information. Personally, I follow you and I learn a lot. So how would you advise other young people to also get, excited about the agriculture sector?
So basically, I didn't plan to be a farmer. I grew up in the village, watched farming happening around me, but I didn't see it as a career option. But when I lost my job, I was retrenched in 2017. That's when I figured out I need something, and the most basic thing is I need to feed myself and my family. And that is how I got hooked. In some way, farming is more than just a business. I call it a calling because it is the job of providing food to many, many people. So for me, I take it as something that I do with joy. It really gives me a purpose, and I wake up rejuvenated every day with passion to produce more and to spread the word for others to produce more. Another thing that has helped to blow up my presence in the farming industry is use of social media. By learning from others, by sharing my journey. That vulnerability, it comes at a price, but also is a bit rewarding.
You sat in the same space with several heads of states,
yes.
and top leaders, I would say, in the agriculture sector.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you tapped that you think we can be able to apply?
So the host of the summit, together with his wife, His Excellency President Kagame, was there almost all the time. He was also there for the gala dinner, and you could see his passion in trying to figure out how Africa can be food secure, how we can come in together and leverage our resources to make sure that we stop having these food hunger challenges. To him, it looked like he was really interested in what was going on and trying to get solutions. Luckily for Rwanda, it also surpassed all the milestones that were set in the agreements of 2021. And for that, it's just to show the goodwill of him being part of the food conversation and making decisions towards that. Other heads of state were also there, first ladies and other members of the executive, which shows the commitment towards that. There was something called a deal room. This is like a Shark Tank scenario where young investors such as myself could go and present and offer my company for shareholding to this forum of international members. Me being in such a high-level meeting was just the awe of seeing how business is done, how negotiation, how diplomacy, how you don't always know everything. And it's good even when you're making that dialogue or discussion to do it in a sensible way, not to show the other person that they are necessarily wrong, but maybe just to correct it with facts, but also listen to their opinion, because facts have different sides, issues have different angles to look at a solution.
When we talk about technology, and we've seen a lot of technology being adopted in the European countries and all that, do you feel like African countries are still lagging behind in adoption?
Adoption of technology is always a challenge, but we are seeing a slow shift towards that. You can't just say adoption of technology. It also comes with other aspects of it. There is awareness and enough information so that people can be able to make an equipped decision. And then the other thing is financing. Most technology is expensive. If I say you should stop using a djembe to dig today, you should buy this handheld tractor that goes for 90,000. That comes as an extra cost of financing. So are we talking about how commercial banks can start funding farmers, can start looking for a package that is adaptive for farmers, because farmers can just be given a facility that is expected to be serviced monthly. Yet farmers deal with seasons. You have 4-month season, you have 8 months. So depending on the crop that the farmer is farming, the commercial banks can come up with a package. So the conversation is more than just adoption of technology. It's about creation awareness, like this issue of genetically modified food. A lot of people are operating on propaganda, operating from ignorance and fear. But if we had time to maybe first do a public awareness campaign, make sure that people really understand the pros and cons. Otherwise, people feel like they are being forced into the decision and it's not up to them. And then they will come back. If something goes wrong, they will come back and blame the system.
So currently we've seen a lot of financial institutions coming up with products, even like insurance products, just to ensure that we revamp production. But do you feel like farmers are really opening up, or are the risks too high?
So when you talk about financing, it's also has a lot to do with policies that are favorable for farmers to be in the system. When we talk about taxing farmers just out of the blue, such issues usually have a lot of resistance. But we need to show farmers you are a business, you are a member of this country, which means you need to pay taxes, and in that way they can be able to see the sense in that. We first need to educate people on proper registration of companies. No one will fund you if you don't have your books right, if you don't have a registered entity. It's very easy now with the online platforms of Huduma Center. The other thing is to make sure that you are recording how much you're making, how much is your expenses, and that kind of thing. There is also the idea of crop insurance and animal insurance. Currently, commercial insurance companies are insuring the crops, but the government hasn't given interest towards that yet.
So let's talk about climate change, which has severely affected agricultural productions. During the summit, what were some of the incentives or some of the dialogues that you feel like can drive us to sustainability in production?
Climate and temperatures change all the time, but we are seeing that we have not had rains in Kenya for the last 2 years. So these are some of the effects to that. We need to get into a new rhythm, starting with the government. I think today I'm just going to be those people who are like Serikali's idea, but how the government does it is that it includes almost all the people. You saw like the polythene bag. It was very effective because it was at policy level. And so we need such decisions to be made as well towards protecting our planet. Number 2 is thinking of carbon emission credits. We need to start paying the farmers or the people who are making sure that they are working towards that, because we can't say there is no one who is climate conscious currently. There are many people working towards that, but they are not being seen, heard, or rewarded. That thing is on cities. Cities happen to have a lot of challenges towards garbage collection and overpopulation of people in one area. His Excellency President Kagame is one of the people who champion for a cleaner environment, and you can see themselves going to the streets and sweeping. This creates that culture of no one is above climate change. All of us are going to have the effects, and more so the poor people in our societies will be affected the most.
Thank you so much for joining us and joining in our conversation today here in Youth in Agriculture. We're going to be taking a short commercial break, but don't go too far because Wangari has a lot in store for us. During the summit, you were specifically talking about urban farming. Yes. What do you want to talk to us about that particular topic?
So I was a speaker, a panel speaker among other panelists, and we were discussing food security in the urban areas. Most people think food only comes from the rural areas because that's where you find chunks of land. In cities, you find people confined in small spaces. They are doing commercial activities, and so they do not necessarily have the time to go and till the land and make it productive. So they are not in agriculture. But we need to bring back that conversation of being food secure. It is good if we are responsible in figuring out how we can, first of all, preserve and add value to whatever food is coming from the rural areas so that it doesn't end up in our landfills. This is something interesting about urban centers. Every one of us, if you have a container, if you have a balcony, if you have even just a small backyard, take that initiative of planting herbs. There is something that plants do to us. Somehow we are related. It's good and it's therapeutic, but it also means that on that day, if there is another pandemic, you won't be worried that your food won't come or it will take too long to get to where you are.
And when you talk about youth and agriculture, how do you think we can accelerate, or whose responsibility is it to accelerate youth employability in the sector?
Because of employment rates in Kenya and in Africa at large, we find that a lot of people are not going into employment as they thought. So the first thing is making sure that you have enough tertiary and practical colleges. This thing of making sure that we're just churning out blue-collar job candidates and graduates, that is no longer viable. Something needs to change at that level of education. Number 2, we have seen the CBC, which is coming out strong on making sure that practical skills are ingrained into a person since they're young. So the challenge starts from way back. But then also to empowering the youth who are post-school, it's realizing the importance of all these opportunities. If anyone just goes online, there are very many companies in the non-governmental sectors who are helping young people with the knowledge skills of managing a business, how to run a business, how to market their business, how to even create websites, and they're giving them technical skills how to actually do this as they go through the course.
Maybe about value addition, what opportunities are there?
We can't talk about food security and forget about value addition. It's a way of preserving the food and increasing its commercial value. In production, there is a big value chain. There are the people who are farming the produce, there are the people who are packing and, making it have more shelf life. And in that way, it's helping to make sure that we have food for a longer time. Value addition, for someone who is a farmer, they need to start thinking of themselves as a manufacturer as well. They don't just sell their maize. What if they could mill it and pack it? What if they could find investors and partners who can help them in this process? There is so much information on YouTube and online on how to add value to certain things, how to increase their shelf life, and we can learn from this at a very small fee.
There is something else I think was being discussed during the summit, and that is the issue to do with nutrition.
Yes.
Just curbing the malnutrition rates in the African continent.
Yeah.
Yes, talk to us about that.
So we know poverty levels are usually measured by the World Health Organization as people who live under $2 a day. But there is a new statistic about malnutrition. People who are living under $5 a day means they are not able to incorporate all the nutrients needed for a human being to thrive. When you think of that and you convert it to a Kenyan scenario, it's about 600 shillings. How many people even get to earn 500 shillings in a day? This leads to the conversations of realizing it's not just about the quantity of food, but the quality of food. The conversation of making sure that we are not just running into proteins that are also going to harm the environment. And in the summit, beans were very popular because it has high protein levels. It's palatable in most communities in the world. And number 3, it is something that grows over a short period of time. Sometimes with the erratic rains that we are having, if you plant maize, you see that the rain is not able to push it to the end of the season. But beans are able to because they are short term, around 3 to 4 months, and you can be able to harvest and make your money. Beans are also a good source of iron for women and children who are growing. So it was an all-around crop that also makes sure that it's taking care of the planet. Yes.
And on the same note, we can talk about what is even happening here in the country. We've seen a lot of northeastern people dying and livestock dying.
Yes.
And we've seen also in other regions of the country where there is plenty of food and a lot of food waste. So is it the issue of distribution as well? What do you think about that?
That's a very good question. An issue of hunger goes back to systemic injustices. There is a way that communities are, and that predisposes them to certain dangers. So let's, for example, talk about our eastern communities, or even my county, Kajiado, where we are seeing a lot of pastoralist communities losing their cows because of drought. There is an issue of culture. These people might not necessarily want to change their economics or their commercial entities to incorporate food as part of their production. So they will go into cultures that are not favoring food security. And when there is a shortfall, you can see they end up suffering. The idea of having too many people coming to help, for me, I see it like, a kitchen full of too many chefs. It is good if people are also empowered themselves to produce the food themselves or figure out where the food will come from. But in Eastern region, because I've been there, you find there is a bit of reliance to the non-governmental organizations. There are a lot of refugee camps, and those funds come and in an unsustainable way, and they create dependency in those communities.
We have a new government in place, and you are a youth.
Yes.
And I hope this was your government of choice, or whether it was or not, either way it's here. What do you think they should do, or what are you expecting for them to do in order to revamp and increase production?
My hopes are very high. I always like to vote for the underdog because they have a reason to change the status quo, because they have been in the oppression side. They have been in the side where we call the hustlers or the strugglers. So for me, my hopes are very high that they will not conform to what previous leaders have done, which is go with the flow and maintain the status quo. And I am very excited to see them, you know, ripping the bandage off and starting with the introduction of GMO and trying to see how we can become food secure. GMO is a very controversial and interesting topic, and I think the first thing is we need a lot of information towards this and seeing how in the long run, as much as we want quantity, we also want to increase the quality of life, and we need someone to explain to us the big picture of how this looks like 3-4 years down the line. The government also has been distribution of fertilizer, which is still in storage. I've been trying to get my bags of fertilizer from the government at the subsidized rate, which is quite exciting. For now, we need policies on how to have a wholesome, a 360 solution. You can't just say you're providing fertilizer, but are you providing seeds, or are you even informing farmers on better seeds? We need to think of all the partners and all the parties in the value chain and make sure that the value chain is strong enough for ultimate production.
Maybe if we can touch on the shamba system and the recent idea.
Yes.
Of having our farmers go back to our forest and doing some farming. What is your take on that?
I think it's a two-edged sword. This can be very good because it means a lot of poor people or people living under who are not able to access land or such assets have a place where they can go and farm, and they can be able to produce food, mostly for subsistence production. This is also a nice way to make sure that the young trees that are trying to grow within the forest have that care, have someone who is giving them nourishment, who is weeding for them, and also making sure that they are secure. That's a good thing. On the other hand, it can be a way of exploiting and cutting down of our forests, which has been a big challenge.
You're really not supporting the idea of going back to our forest and farming. You really are against that.
Yeah, so
to an extent.
To an extent, I am not for it because forests are like the most natural habitat. They're untouched, they're undisturbed, and that piece goes a lot into the ecosystem of even us as human beings. Remember, we are a food chain. We are all connected, and interfering with forests, and you know, they need to stay pure according to my opinion, because when you start digging down at the bottom of those trees, first there is canopy, so there is the issue of sunlight, which then brings the issue of compromising the trees. Even if you're pruning it, you're still interfering with that forest cover. Number two is the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers in the farming, which can lead to killing and destroying of some of these ecosystems, like the healthy worms, the healthy organisms. They say there are so many organisms under the ground than even on top of the ground.
Your final remarks, and specifically about the AGRA dialogues that happened there and you being a participant, what is it that you would want to leave us with?
My final remarks is to always put the farmer in the table. Most of the organizations that discuss food security leave out the farmer, and they think that that is just a dirty part of the equation. But we are seeing certain institutions like AGRA trying to push back the farmer into the conversation to also give their own reality vitu kwa ground scenario, which is very important. I also would like to urge young people, whenever they see these forums, they're online, you can get an email list and you can be invited. Join the Zoom. It won't cost much. Join the Zoom, get to learn about it, see yourself as a stakeholder to the conversation, and keep doing at it, keep growing. The idea about life and success is about consistency. So pick your passion and let it grow consistently.
Thank you so much for keeping it here on Youth in Agriculture. And if you have a story that you want to share with us, let me know through the email address that is on your screen. But until next time, it's bye-bye from us.